At 65, I sold my hotel chain for $47 million. To celebrate, I invited my only daughter to dinner. With a smile on her face, she proposed a toast to my success. But when my cell phone rang and I stepped out to take the call, something happened that would change our lives forever. And the clock began the countdown to my silent revenge. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories are reaching. I never thought the person I loved most in the world would be capable of killing me for money. But life has a cruel way of showing that sometimes we know the people we raise less than we imagine. The restaurant was one of those places where silence has texture. The kind of establishment where people don't raise their voices, and the background music is just a whisper. The tablecloths were immaculate white linen, and every piece of silverware gleamed under the soft light of the chandeliers. I sat across from my daughter Sarah, a 38-year-old woman I had raised alone after the early death of my husband David. He passed away when she was only 12, leaving me in charge of our small beachside inn and raising our little girl. That small inn was now a chain of hotels I had just sold for $47 million. It was the end of an era and the beginning of another. Decades of hard work, sleepless nights, countless sacrifices, all to make sure my daughter had the best I could offer. To your health, Mom. Sarah raised her champagne glass, her eyes shining in a way I interpreted as pride. 47 million, can you believe it? You're incredible. I smiled, clinking my glass against hers. I took a small sip of my cranberry juice. My cardiologist had been firm. No alcohol for me. My blood pressure was out of control, and I took my health very seriously. Sarah looked stunning that night. She wore an elegant black dress I had given her for her last birthday. Her brown hair, identical to mine when I was her age, was swept up in an elaborate bun. Beside her, Michael, her husband of 5 years, smiled with that charming attitude that had always made me uncomfortable, though I could never quite explain why. I'm so happy you finally decided to sell Helen. Michael said, also raising his glass. Now you can enjoy life. Travel, rest. You've worked too much. I nodded, though something in his tone bothered me. It was as if he were more relieved than happy for me, as if the sale represented something different to him than it did to me. I have plans, I replied simply. The David Foundation is just the beginning. I saw a flicker of something cross Sarah's face. Irritation, worry. It was so fast I couldn't identify it. Foundation, she asked, her voice suddenly tense. Yes, I'm creating a foundation in your father's name to help orphaned children. A significant part of the sale will go to that. Michael coughed, nearly choking on his champagne. How wonderful, he said, but his voice betrayed another emotion. And how much exactly are you planning to donate? Before I could answer, my cell phone rang. It was Jessica, my lawyer and friend of decades, someone who knew my family as well as I did. I have to take this, I said, getting up. It's about the final details of the sale. I walked to the restaurant lobby where the signal was better. The conversation with Jessica was brief, just a few details about signing the final documents the next morning. When I returned, I noticed something strange. Sarah and Michael were talking in urgent whispers that stopped immediately as I approached. Is everything okay? I asked as I sat down. Of course, Mom, Sarah smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. I was just telling Michael how proud I am of you. I nodded, picking up my glass of cranberry juice. I was about to take a sip when I noticed something. A slight residue at the bottom of the glass, as if something had dissolved in it. I put the glass back on the table without drinking. Who wants dessert? I asked, casually changing the subject. The dinner continued for another half hour. I ordered a new juice, claiming the previous one was too sweet, and I watched Sarah and Michael's reactions closely. There was tension in their smiles, a poorly disguised anxiety in their gestures. When we finally said goodbye on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant, Sarah hugged me tightly. I love you, Mom, she said. And for a moment, I almost believed it was true. I got into my car and waited until their vehicle disappeared around the corner. I was about to start the engine when I heard a light tap on the window. It was Anthony, the waiter who had served us all night. His face wore a grave expression that immediately alarmed me. I rolled down the window. Yes, Mrs. Helen, he said in a low voice, looking around nervously as if he was afraid of being heard. Forgive me for intruding, but there's something I need to tell you. What is it, Anthony? He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. When you stepped out to answer the phone, I saw something. I was serving the next table and... He paused, swallowing hard. I saw your daughter put something in your glass, a white powder from a small vial she took from her purse. Her husband was looking around as if on watch to make sure no one saw. My blood froze. Even though I had already noticed something strange in the glass and suspected something, hearing the confirmation from a witness was devastating. Are you absolutely sure about this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Anthony nodded, his gaze direct and firm. Absolutely, ma'am. I've been working here for 15 years. I've never meddled in customers' lives, but I couldn't stay silent about this. I couldn't sleep. And did you tell anyone else? No, ma'am. I came straight to you. I thought, well, that you should know. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. Anthony, thank you for your honesty. Would you mind if I kept the glass to check it? I already took care of that, he replied, pulling a sealed plastic bag from his pocket containing my juice glass. I was going to suggest the same. If you want to have it tested, well, the proof is right here. I took the bag with trembling hands. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Mrs. Helen. Just be careful. People who do these kinds of things are dangerous. With one last worried look, Anthony walked away, heading back into the restaurant. I sat in the car for several minutes, holding the bag with the glass, feeling as if the world had collapsed on top of me. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't of sadness. They were of a cold fury I had never felt before. A kind of rage that turns blood to ice and thoughts to precise calculations. I wiped my face and picked up the phone. Jessica answered on the second ring. You were right. That was all I said. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Jessica knew. For months she had tried to warn me about Sarah and Michael's financial problems, about how they started getting closer after the sale was announced. I didn't want to believe it. I preferred to think she was just a daughter rediscovering her love for her mother. How much time do you think we have? She finally asked. Not much. They're going to try again. What do you want to do, Helen? I looked at the glass inside the plastic bag, imagining my daughter's hands pouring poison into her own mother's drink. I want them to pay, I replied, my voice firmer than ever. Not with jail. That would be too easy. I want them to feel every gram of the poison they tried to give me. The glass of juice was still with me, sealed in a plastic bag. Even before Anthony's confirmation, something inside me, maybe maternal instinct, maybe self-preservation, had warned me not to drink the suspicious content. The next morning, I took it to a private lab. The kind of place that doesn't ask questions when you put a wad of $100 bills on the counter along with the sample. The kind of place that works fast and quietly. I want a full analysis, no questions asked. I need the results today. I told the technician, a young man with glasses, who looked at me with curiosity but accepted my proposal without hesitation. While I waited, I sat in a nearby cafe. My cell phone rang. It was Sarah. Mom, are you okay? You didn't look too good last night. Her voice sounded concerned, but now I could hear the falseness behind every word. I'm fine, dear, I replied, forcing a light tone. Just a little tired. I'm going to rest today. Oh, good. I thought you might be, I don't know, sick or something. Disappointed I'm not dead, I thought. But I said, not at all. I feel great. There was an awkward pause. And what about that foundation you mentioned? Is that really something you want to do right now? I mean, you just sold the hotels. Maybe it's better to rest a bit before starting new projects. Ah, so that was it. The money, always the money. It's all in motion, Sarah. In fact, I'm going to sign the documents with Jessica right now. Another pause, longer this time. How much are you putting into that foundation, Mom? I closed my eyes, controlling the pain that threatened to swallow me. 30 million, I answered calmly, a lie I knew would make her desperate. It's a good start for the work I want to do. I could hear her breathing quicken on the other end of the line. 30 million? But Mom, that's almost everything. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? You can't. I have to go, dear. The taxi is here. I hung up before she could protest further. Now I knew exactly what my life was worth to my daughter. $47 million. No more, no less. 3 hours later, the lab called me. The results were ready. When the technician handed me the envelope, his hands were trembling slightly. He knew what he had found. "Ma'am, this is—" he began, but I raised a hand to interrupt him. "Thank you," I said, simply paying the rest of what we agreed upon. In the car, I opened the envelope. The report was clear and devastating. Propranolol in a concentration 10 times higher than the normal therapeutic dose. A dose that, according to the technician's note, could cause severe bradycardia hypotension and possible cardiac arrest in individuals with pre-existing cardiovascular conditions. Exactly what I had. Hypertension and a slight heart murmur. Conditions that Sarah knew perfectly well. Conditions that would make my death seem natural. A sad heart attack in an old woman who had just received a large sum of money and was under stress. The perfect plan. I called Jessica and drove to her office downtown. When I entered her office, she was already waiting for me, sitting behind her imposing oak desk, her black-rimmed glasses highlighting her sharp eyes. "Well?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. I placed the report on the desk. She read it quickly, her face remaining impassive, except for a brief tightening of her lips. "Propranolol," she said finally. "An interesting choice. Hard to detect in a routine autopsy. She studied nursing for 2 semesters before dropping out," I explained. "She must have learned enough." Jessica leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. "What do you want to do, Helen? We can go to the police with this." I shook my head. "And turn this into a public spectacle. Watch my daughter be tried convicted. See the name I built dragged through the mud. No, that's not going to happen." "Then what?" I took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm wash over me. "You told me Sarah and Michael are in financial trouble. I want to know exactly how deep." Jessica opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. She slid it across the desk to me. I already requested a full financial investigation. The results came in this morning. I opened the folder and started reading. As I turned the pages, a bleak and pathetic picture formed before my eyes. Sarah and Michael were drowning in debt. Maxed out credit cards, loans from loan sharks, a luxury car with overdue payments, a mortgaged apartment about to go into foreclosure, expensive trips, extravagant dinners, designer clothes, a life of ostentation built on quicksand. "They're bankrupt," I stated, closing the folder. "They're desperate for money." "Exactly," Jessica confirmed. "And when you mentioned putting most of the money into a foundation, that was the trigger I completed." They realized they were about to lose the only chance to save the lifestyle they had created. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation hanging between us. "What saddens me the most," I said finally, "is not the attempt to kill me. It's that they didn't need to. If they were in trouble, they could have come to me, asked for help. I would have helped them. I always helped." Jessica reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. "Some people are blinded by greed, Helen. They can't see anything beyond their own desires." I took a deep breath and stood up, a decision crystallizing in my mind. "I need you to do a few things for me, Jessica. First, I want you to draft a new will. Second, I need you to schedule a meeting with Sarah and Michael for tomorrow here in your office. Tell them it's about the foundation, that I'm reconsidering the amounts." Jessica looked at me, raising an eyebrow. "What are you planning?" "Something they'll never forget," I replied, feeling a cold determination grow inside me, a lesson about consequences. As I was leaving Jessica's office, I received a text from Sarah. "Mom, can we have dinner tonight? Michael and I want to talk about some plans for your future." I smiled bitterly at the phone. Plans for my future, or the lack of it? "I'm sorry, dear. I'm feeling a little unwell. Can we meet tomorrow at Jessica's office at 10 a.m.? The reply came almost instantly. "Sure, Mom. Get some rest. We love you so much. We love you so much." Empty words from a daughter who less than 24 hours ago had tried to kill me for money. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely light, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The pain was still there, deep and sharp, but it was now accompanied by a clarity I had never experienced before. I prepared carefully for the meeting. I chose a gray suit, elegant and understated. I pulled my gray hair back into a simple bun. No makeup, nothing to mask the lines that life had etched on my face. I wanted Sarah to see me exactly as I was, an aging mother she tried to kill. When I arrived at Jessica's office, she was already waiting for me in the reception area. There was something different in her eyes, a glint of admiration mixed with concern. "They're already in the conference room," she informed me. "They seem anxious." "They should be," I replied, adjusting the strap of my purse where I had tucked the lab report. "How long until the detective gets here?" "He called 10 minutes ago. He's in the building on the floor below, waiting for our signal." I nodded, satisfied. Jessica had hired an ex-cop to help us with what was about to happen. It wasn't official, it wasn't legal, but it was necessary. "Let's go then," I said, straightening my shoulders. As I entered the conference room, Sarah and Michael stood up immediately. My daughter was wearing a light blue dress, almost innocent in its cut. Michael was impeccable in a dark suit. They looked like a model couple, the kind from a bank or a life insurance ad. "Mom." Sarah came forward with her arms open to hug me. I took an imperceptible step back. She hesitated, confused but quickly recovered, turning the movement into a gesture to pull out a chair for me. "Are you feeling better today?" she asked, her face a mask of concern. "Much better," I replied, sitting down. "It's amazing what a good night's sleep can do." Michael smiled, showing perfect and overly white teeth. "I'm glad to hear that, Helen. We were worried." "I bet you were," I thought. "Worried I was still alive." Jessica sat down next to me, opening a folder containing several documents. Her expression was one of absolute professionalism, although I knew the whirlwind of emotions she must be feeling. Jessica had been my friend for over 30 years. She had been Sarah's maid of honor. She had treated her like a niece. "Well," she began, "Helen asked me to call this meeting to discuss some adjustments to the financial plans after the sale of the hotels." Sarah's eyes momentarily sparkled. Michael straightened in his chair. "As you know," Jessica continued, "Helen initially planned to allocate a significant portion of the sale's value to the David Foundation." "30 million," Sarah interrupted, her voice betraying a slight tremor. "Mom, I really think that's too much. I mean, of course it's your money and you do what you want, but—" I raised my hand, silencing her. "Actually, there's been a change of plans," I said calmly. After thinking about it, I realized I might have been too hasty. Sarah's face lit up with poorly concealed hope. "Really?" she asked, leaning forward. "Yes," I continued. "I realize there are more important things than I imagined. Things that only become clear when you're on the verge of death." A heavy silence fell over the room. Michael swallowed hard. Sarah froze, her smile faltering for a moment. "What do you mean, Mom?" she asked, forcing a light laugh. "You look great." Instead of answering, I opened my purse and took out the lab report. I placed it on the table and slid it towards the couple. "Do you know what this is?" I asked softly. Sarah looked at the document without touching it. Michael remained motionless like a statue. "It's a toxicology report." I continued, my voice still calm, almost clinical. "An analysis of my cranberry juice from the night before last. Interesting, isn't it, propranolol in a potentially lethal dose for someone with my heart conditions?" The color drained from Sarah's face. Michael began to sweat visibly. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah stammered, her gaze darting between Jessica and me. "Is this some kind of joke?" "A joke?" I repeated, tilting my head. "No, Sarah. It's not a joke. Just as it's not a joke that you two are drowning in debt, or the fact that you tried to poison me to inherit my money before I wasted it on a foundation." Michael started to get up, but Jessica stopped him with a firm gesture. "I suggest you two stay exactly where you are," she said, her voice as cold as steel. "Things will get much worse if you try to leave now." Sarah started to cry, large tears rolling down her perfectly made-up face. "Mom, I swear I don't know what you're talking about." I would never do something like that. Never. It was an impressive performance. If I didn't have Anthony's words, if I didn't have the report, I might have even believed her. Sarah, I said, my voice finally breaking a little. The waiter saw everything. Anthony, remember him. He saw you put something in my glass while I was on the phone. He saw Michael keeping watch to make sure no one was looking. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael looked at Sarah, who had stopped crying. Her face now showed something different. It was no longer fear or shock. It was calculation. She was weighing her options, trying to find a way out. This is ridiculous. Michael finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly. You're accusing us of attempted murder. Based on what? The testimony of a waiter who could be lying. A lab report that could have been faked. Jessica smiled a humorless smile. That's exactly why we have a guest waiting to join us, she said, picking up the phone. He's eager to hear your explanations. She dialed a number and spoke briefly. Seconds later, the door opened and a tall, serious-looking man entered. He wore a simple suit and carried a folder similar to Jessica's. This is Charles Miller, Jessica introduced, former detective with the Federal Police, now a private consultant. Charles greeted everyone with a nod and sat down next to Jessica. Mr. Miller has spent the last 48 hours investigating the two of you. I continued, watching the panic grow in Sarah's eyes. He discovered some interesting things. Do you want to hear? No one answered. The silence was answer enough. For example, I went on, he found out that Michael made several online searches about the effects of propranolol on patients with heart problems. He found out that Sarah used a fake name to buy the drug at a pharmacy on the other side of town. And he found out that you two owe over $2 million to people who are not known for their patience with debtors. Michael began to tremble visibly. Sarah seemed to have gone into shock, her gaze fixed on a distant point. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice low and defeated. What do I want? I repeated, feeling a wave of sadness wash over me. I want to understand how my own daughter got to this point. How could you even think of killing me? How did money become more important than love, than family, than everything I thought I had taught you? Sarah finally looked me in the eyes. There were no more tears, no fear, no calculation. There was only a coldness that frightened me. You want to know why? She asked, her voice surprisingly calm. Because you always cared more about your hotels, your money, your precious legacy than me. Because after Dad died, you drowned yourself in work and left me aside. Because you promised that one day everything would be mine, that I could finally live the life I deserve. And then you decide to donate it all to a stupid foundation. Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Was that what she thought? That I had neglected her? That the hard work to build something for both of us to secure our future was a form of abandonment? Sarah, I began, my voice trembling. I worked hard for us to make sure you had opportunities I never had, so you would never have to worry about money. And look where that got us, she replied bitterly. You with your millions and me trying to kill you so I wouldn't lose everything. The rawness of the confession made everyone in the room hold their breath. Michael looked at her in horror. Sarah, shut up, he hissed. You're confessing to a crime. She laughed, a hollow, lifeless sound. What's the difference? She already knows everyone knows. I looked at my daughter, the little girl who once held my hand as we walked on the beach, who cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend left her, who swore to be by my side always, no matter what. And I made my final decision. You have two options, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. First option, Jessica calls the police right now. You are arrested for attempted murder. With the evidence we have, a conviction is practically certain. You'll spend years in prison. Sarah stared at the table, while Michael looked like he was about to faint. Second option, I continued. You sign the documents Jessica prepared. You confess everything in writing. The document will be kept in a safe. If anything happens to me, anything natural or not, it will be immediately handed over to the authorities. And in return, Michael asked, his voice barely audible, in return, you disappear from my life forever. No contact, no attempts at reconciliation, no asking for money. You take what you have and leave the country. You start a new life far away from me." Jessica slid a thick document across the table. It was the confession, detailed and relentless, accompanied by a legal agreement that bound them to never contact me again under penalty of the confession's release. "And the money?" Sarah asked, her eyes finally meeting mine. "What about it?" I felt a pang in my heart. Even now, cornered, all she thought about was money. "Most of it goes to the David Foundation as planned," I replied, "but I'm willing to pay off your debts on the condition that you never return." Michael looked at Sarah, then at the documents. "Can we have a moment to discuss it?" he asked. "No," Jessica replied sharply. "You decide now or we call the police. It's not negotiable." A tense silence settled in the room. Finally, Sarah reached for the pen. "We have no choice," she muttered to Michael. "It's this or jail." As they signed the documents one after another, I felt an emptiness expanding inside me. This was the end. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness. Only the end of a family I had spent my entire life trying to protect and nurture. When they finished, Jessica collected the papers and put them in a folder. "Mr. Miller will accompany you to your apartment to collect your essential belongings," she informed them. "You have 48 hours to leave the country. If you do not comply with this deadline, the police will be notified immediately." Michael nodded, defeated. Sarah continued to stare at the table as if she couldn't believe what had happened. "One last thing," I said as they stood up to leave. "Why really not that abandonment story? You know it's not true. I gave everything for you, Sarah, absolutely everything." She finally looked up, and I saw something I had never noticed before, a deep emptiness, as if something essential was missing inside her. "Because it was easier," she answered with terrifying honesty. "Easier than working, than saving, than building something from scratch like you did. Easier than accepting we had ruined our finances. Easier than admitting our lifestyle was a lie." Her words hung in the air like poison. No love, no hate, just a cold, calculating convenience that made me feel like I was looking at a stranger. "Goodbye, Sarah." I said each word feeling like a heavy stone. "I hope you find what you're looking for." She didn't reply. She simply followed Michael and Charles out of the room without looking back. The door closed with a soft click, and suddenly I realized my daughter was dead. Not physically, but the person I loved, the one I had raised, no longer existed. Maybe she never had. Jessica and I sat in silence for several minutes. She finally took my hand. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, unable to speak. The tears I had held back throughout the meeting finally came, a silent stream running down my face. "I'll take you home," she said gently. On the way, looking out the car window, I saw families walking on the sidewalks. Mothers holding the hands of small children, teenagers arguing with their parents, common everyday scenes that now seemed to belong to a world to which I no longer had access. 2 weeks passed. Charles confirmed that Sarah and Michael had left the country headed for Portugal with what little money they had left. The promise to pay their debts was kept not out of generosity, but because I didn't want loan sharks looking for them and eventually coming to me. I settled into a quiet routine. In the morning, I walked on the beach near my house. In the afternoon, I worked on the details of the David Foundation. At night, I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea watching the sea and trying to understand how I had gotten to this point. It was during one of those nights that Jessica showed up unannounced. She carried a folder under her arm and a determined expression on her face. "Enough moping," she declared, placing the folder on the table in front of me. "It's time to start living again." I looked at her, surprised by her direct approach. "What's this projects?" she replied, opening the folder. "Projects for the David Foundation. Things you can do now. People you can help. Lives you can change." Inside the folder were detailed proposals: a shelter for orphaned children, a scholarship program for young people from needy communities, a vocational training center for vulnerable people. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked. Jessica sat down next to me, her gaze as direct and frank as ever. "Because you're drowning in sadness and guilt. You're wondering where you went wrong. What could you have done differently?" But the truth, Helen, is that some people just make bad choices. No matter how well they're raised, how loved they are, they choose the wrong path. I remained silent, absorbing her words. Sarah made her choice, Jessica continued. Now it's time for you to make yours. You can hide here mourning what you've lost, or you can transform that pain into something positive. You can honor David's memory, not just with his name on a foundation, but with actions he would have been proud of. I looked at the projects spread out before me. Each one represented an opportunity to do something meaningful, to perhaps fill the void that Sarah had left. I don't know if I have the strength for that, I admitted. Jessica smiled a kind but determined smile. You built an empire from scratch after David died. You raised a daughter alone. You survived a murder attempt by the person you loved most in the world. You have the strength for anything. That night, while Jessica slept in the guest room, I sat at my desk with the Foundation's projects. I started making notes, suggestions, plans. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt something beyond pain, a purpose. The next morning, when Jessica entered the kitchen, she found me already dressed and drinking coffee. I want to start with the shelter, I announced without preamble. There's a plot of land near the city center that would be perfect. We can start construction in a month if we speed up the paperwork. Jessica's smile lit up her face. Welcome back, she said simply, and so began the next phase of my life. Not as a mother, not as a businesswoman, but as someone determined to transform a personal tragedy into a legacy of hope for others. A year passed since that devastating meeting in Jessica's office. Fall had given way to winter and winter to spring. Nature followed its relentless cycle, indifferent to the human dramas unfolding under its gaze. That sunny April morning, I parked my car in front of a large plot of land fenced with colorful hoardings. A huge banner announced Future Home of the David Miller Children, an initiative of the David Foundation. Several workers were moving around the site, and the sound of heavy machinery filled the air. Jessica met me at the entrance dressed casually, a rare sight for her. "Ready for the inspection tour?" she asked, handing me a yellow hard hat. I nodded, putting on the helmet. As we walked through the construction site, the chief engineer joined us, explaining every detail of the project. The foundations were already laid, and the walls of the first floor were beginning to take shape. "The electrical installations start next week," he explained, showing the blueprints, "and we hope to have the roof on before the June rains." I looked around, visualizing what the place would look like when finished. Cozy rooms for 50 children, study rooms, a library, a dining hall, recreation areas. A space designed not as an institution, but as a real home. And here, the engineer pointed to a large area in the center of the plot. "This will be the garden you requested, with the preserved tree, just as you asked." In the middle of the construction site, miraculously surviving the construction, was an old yellow épée tree. I had insisted that it be kept, that the entire construction be adapted to preserve it. It was a tree similar to one that David and I had planted in the yard of our first house when Sarah was still a baby. "It's looking beautiful," I commented, feeling a mixture of pride and melancholy. After the visit, Jessica and I had lunch at a small nearby restaurant. While we ate, she handed me a folder. "Semi-annual report of the foundation," she explained. "In addition to the shelter, we've already granted 25 scholarships and started the renovation of the community center in the Hope neighborhood." I skimmed the pages, impressed by the progress. In just 6 months, the David Foundation had become a real force for change in the city. "And how are the finances?" I asked. "Solid. The initial investment is yielding well, and we've received some significant donations from other local entrepreneurs. Your example inspired a lot of people, Helen." I smiled, thinking how much David would have loved to see all this. He always talked about giving back to the community when we succeeded. He didn't live long enough for it, but his dream was finally coming true. "There's something I need to tell you," Jessica said, hesitating, after we finished eating. "I received news about Sarah and Michael." My heart skipped a beat. Despite everything, I couldn't help the instant concern that arose. "What happened?" "They separated," Jessica replied, watching my reaction closely. Michael returned to the U.S. a month ago. He's living with his parents in Chicago. And Sarah? She's still in Portugal. She got a job as a receptionist at a hotel in Lisbon. I absorbed the information in silence. I didn't feel satisfaction at their difficulties, only a deep sadness for what could have been. Did she ask about me? The words escaped before I could stop them. Jessica shook her head. No. Charles keeps in touch with a local detective who monitors them discreetly, just to ensure they're complying with the agreement. She didn't mention you. I nodded, swallowing the lump that had formed in my throat. It was better this way. Cutting all ties, all hopes of reconciliation. Sarah had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. That night, sitting on my balcony as usual, I thought about how life had taken unexpected turns. Sarah's betrayal had destroyed something fundamental inside me, but it had also opened up space for something new to flourish. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was an unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Mrs. Helen Miller. A young female voice. Yes, this is she. My name is Lily Carter. I'm one of the scholars from the David Foundation. I was surprised. It wasn't common for scholars to have my personal number. Hello, Lily. How did you get my contact? Dr. Jessica gave it to me, she explained quickly. She said I should speak directly with you about my project. Jessica always taking liberties, but she was rarely wrong in her judgments. What project would that be? I'm studying medicine, as you know from my record at the Foundation. But in addition to the regular classes, I'm developing a research on alternative treatments for heart disease. My interest was immediately piqued. Heart disease, like the one that took David, always had a special meaning for me. Go on, I encouraged her. We're working with a tissue regeneration technique that has shown promising results in preliminary tests, but we need to expand the research and the current funding is limited. And you're calling me to invite you to visit our lab, she replied enthusiastically. I know the David Foundation has a special focus on education and shelter, but I believe this research aligns perfectly with the Foundation's values. Saving lives, preventing other children from losing their parents, like you lost your husband. I was impressed by the research she had done on me. Jessica must have told her a lot. When would this visit be? Tomorrow, if possible. We'll be conducting an important experiment, and it would be a perfect opportunity for you to see the work in progress. I hesitated. My schedule was relatively free, but I hadn't planned on getting involved with projects beyond those already established by the Foundation. Lily, I'll be honest, it sounds like a fascinating project, but I'm not sure it's within the current scope of the Foundation. I understand, she replied, her voice showing disappointment. But if you'll allow me just 1 hour of your time, I promise you'll see the potential. We're talking about a treatment that could have saved your husband, Mrs. Helen. Her words struck a chord. David had died suddenly from a massive heart attack. The doctor said there was nothing that could be done, that even with immediate attention, the chances were minimal. Since then, I had always wondered if with advances in medicine, stories like his could have different endings. All right, I finally conceded. Give me the address. I'll be there tomorrow at 10 a.m. After hanging up, I thought about the coincidence. The same day I received news about Sarah. This opportunity arose to honor David's memory in a way I hadn't considered contributing to research that could save other families from the pain we felt. Maybe there were no coincidences. Maybe life simply followed its flow, opening unexpected doors when others closed. The next morning, I drove to the university following Lily's directions. The campus was large and wooded, with modern buildings scattered among green areas. The lab was in a new building dedicated to biomedical research. Lily was waiting for me at the entrance. She was a young woman of about 25 with dark hair tied back in a ponytail and bright, intelligent eyes that shone with enthusiasm. She wore a pristine white lab coat over simple clothes. Mrs. Helen, thank you so much for coming. She greeted me, extending her hand. It's an honor to meet you personally. The pleasure is mine, I replied, shaking her hand. There was something familiar about her that I couldn't quite place. Jessica speaks very highly of your work. Dr. Jessica has been a great support. she smiled. "Come, let me show you the lab." As we walked through the hallways, Lily enthusiastically explained the ongoing projects. Her passion for medicine was contagious, reminding me of the enthusiasm David had for his work. The lab was impressive. State-of-the-art equipment, researchers focused on their workstations, an atmosphere of dedication and purpose. "This is the heart of our project," Lily said, leading me to an area separated by glass partitions. Inside the space, several researchers were working with microscopes and equipment I didn't recognize. On a central table, a device pulsed gently, simulating the beat of a human heart. "We are developing an artificial heart tissue that can be integrated into damaged muscle," she explained. "Using the patient's own stem cells, we eliminate the risk of rejection and accelerate the recovery process." For almost 2 hours, Lily guided me through the lab, explaining every aspect of the research with surprising clarity. I didn't understand all the technical terms, but I grasped the essentials. They were creating a technology that could revolutionize the treatment of heart disease. "And how much does it cost to expand this research?" I finally asked when we sat down in her small office for a coffee. She hesitated, biting her lip. $600,000 for the next year. That would allow us to hire 2 more researchers and acquire essential equipment for preliminary clinical trials. It was a considerable sum, but well within the Foundation's possibilities. "Why doesn't the Research Promotion Agency finance it?" "They do, but the process is slow. We're competing with dozens of other projects. We could lose months, even years." "Meanwhile, people die," I completed. She nodded, her eyes serious. "Exactly. People like your husband." Again, I felt that strange familiarity looking at her. Something in her gaze and the way she tilted her head as she spoke. "Lily, you mentioned that Jessica talks a lot about me. What exactly did she tell you?" The young woman hesitated, suddenly looking uncomfortable. "Well, she told me about the Foundation, about how it was created in memory of your husband, about the incredible work you're doing." "Is that all?" She took a deep breath, as if making a difficult decision. "No, she also told me about your daughter." A heavy silence fell over the small office. I looked at Lily, trying to decipher her expression. There was no judgment there, only a genuine compassion that puzzled me. "And what exactly did she tell you about my daughter?" I finally asked, my voice tighter than I intended. Lily shifted in her chair, her fingers drumming nervously on the desk. "She told me what happened, the poisoning attempt, how you found out the agreement. And why would she share something so personal with you?" She briefly looked away, as if gathering courage. "Because I asked her to. Because I needed to understand before I met you." The answer confused me even more. "You needed to understand why." Instead of answering directly, Lily opened her desk drawer and took out a framed photograph. She passed it to me silently. It was an old photo, yellowed with time. It showed a tall, gray-haired man with an arm around a younger woman. They were smiling at the camera in front of a small house. "Who are they?" I asked, although something inside me already knew the answer. "My parents," Lily replied softly, "or rather the people who raised me." I looked at her with new understanding, now noticing the details. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile features that were painfully familiar to me. "You are," I began, unable to complete the sentence. "Your granddaughter." She confirmed, her firm gaze meeting mine. "Sarah had me when she was 17. She couldn't or didn't want to raise me. I was adopted by a couple from rural Ohio." My mind was reeling. A granddaughter. I had a granddaughter. All these years, while I was building hotels, accumulating wealth, planning a legacy, there was a part of my family that I didn't even know existed. "Sarah never told me," I whispered more to myself than to Lily. "She never said a word about having a daughter." "I found out about you 2 years ago," Lily continued. "My adoptive parents were always honest with me about the adoption. When I turned 25, they gave me the documents they had about my biological mother. It wasn't much, just a name, Sarah Miller." She paused, watching my reaction. "Initially, I didn't plan to look for her. I had a happy life, wonderful parents. I didn't feel a void that needed to be filled. But I'm a doctor, and there are health issues, family histories that can be important, so I started investigating. And I found you first. She smiled slightly. I read about the sale of the hotel chain about the David Foundation. I found out that Sarah was your only daughter. I was watching from afar, trying to decide if I should approach. That's when I met Dr. Jessica through a scholarship program at the foundation. Did Jessica know who you were from the beginning? Lily shook her head. No. At first, she was just the director of the foundation who awarded me a scholarship. We became closer because she frequently visited the lab. She seemed genuinely interested in our work. It was only a few months ago that I decided to tell her. I thought I needed help in deciding whether or not to look for you. And she suggested this strategy, bringing me here under the pretext of funding for the research. A blush covered Lily's face. The research is real, she hurried to clarify. Everything I showed you is true. We are really developing these techniques and we really need funding. But yes, it was her idea to help me create this opportunity. She thought it would be easier than just showing up at your door saying, "Hi, I'm your granddaughter." I couldn't help but smile a little. It was typical of Jessica, always pragmatic, always planning several steps ahead. "Have you spoken to Sarah?" I asked, dreading the answer. "I tried," Lily admitted. "I traveled to Portugal 3 months ago. I managed to find her, but—" She stopped, her eyes filling with tears. "She didn't want to meet me. She said that part of her life was closed, that it was better for me to go my way, and she hers." The impact of those words was like a physical blow. Even after everything Sarah had done, she still managed to surprise me with her cruelty. Rejecting her own daughter, denying her even the chance of a conversation. "I'm so sorry," I said, reaching out and holding her hand. "No one deserves that kind of rejection." Lily wiped a tear with her free hand. "It's okay. Like I said, I had wonderful parents. I'm not looking for a mother, but I thought maybe you would like to know that you have a granddaughter. That part of your legacy continues in a way you didn't expect." I looked at her, this intelligent, compassionate, and determined young woman, and I felt something unravel inside me. A knot of bitterness and pain that I had carried since Sarah's betrayal began to loosen. "Lily," I said, my voice choked with emotion, "I would love to get to know my granddaughter, truly not just as a potential funder of your research, but as your grandmother, if you want, of course." Her face lit up with a smile that painfully reminded me of Sarah as a child, before life or her own choices transformed her into the person she became. "I would like that very much," she replied. At that moment, something fundamentally changed in my life. The open wound from Sarah's betrayal didn't disappear. It probably never would completely, but it was covered by something new and unexpected. The possibility of a new family connection, a new beginning. "As for the research," I said after a moment, "consider the funding approved. Jessica can take care of the paperwork. It's a project worth supporting on its own, regardless of our connection." The following days were a roller coaster of emotions. Lily and I began to build a relationship cautiously at first, but with growing openness and trust. I discovered that she was everything I could hope for in a granddaughter, brilliant like David, determined like myself, but with a gentleness and compassion that were entirely her own. Perhaps a result of the loving upbringing she received from her adoptive parents, simple but generous people who had raised her with solid values. A week after our first meeting, I invited Lily to dinner at my house. As we prepared the meal together, she insisted on helping, refusing to let me do everything alone. I realized I was laughing more than I had in months. "How are your adoptive parents?" I asked as we chopped vegetables side by side in the kitchen. "Do they know about me?" "Yes, they do," Lily replied. "In fact, they were the ones who encouraged me to look for you after I got back from Portugal. Mom said that family is where we find love, not just where we have common blood, and that the more love I had in my life, the better." "They sound like wise people. I'd like to meet them someday." "They would love that. Dad is especially curious about you. He was the manager of a small hotel his whole life. When he heard you had built a hotel chain, he was impressed." I smiled, imagining the meeting. A hotel manager and the former owner of a chain. We would have a lot to talk about. "Your adoptive mother, doesn't she feel threatened by me, by our closeness?" Lily shook her head, smiling. Not at all. Mom has a heart the size of the world. She always said that if I ever found my biological mother or any relatives, she would be happy for me. She doesn't see love as a competition, but as something that multiplies when shared. Reflecting on her words as we continued cooking, I realized the irony. I had lost a daughter who had everything, love, comfort, opportunities, but who chose greed above all else. And here was my granddaughter raised by people of modest means, but with a wealth of spirit that Sarah never knew. "You like to cook," I observed, watching the skill with which she handled the ingredients. "I love it. Mom taught me since I was little. She says doctors need to know how to eat well. They can't live on just hospital food." I laughed, remembering how David also liked to cook. He said it was his form of therapy after a long day at work. "Your grandfather also loved to cook," I commented. "He was an expert at pasta. He made gnocchi that was a work of art." "Really?" Her eyes sparkled with interest. "I have a weakness for pasta too. My specialty is lasagna." "It must run in the family," I joked. And soon we found ourselves laughing together, as if we had known each other for years, not days. During dinner, Lily told me more about her life, her studies, her dreams for the future. In return, I shared stories about David, about how we built the company together, about Sarah's early years. "What was she like when she was a child, I mean?" Lily asked, hesitantly, stirring the leftover food on her plate with her fork. I sighed, searching for the right words. "She was vibrant, full of energy and curiosity. She loved adventures. She always wanted to explore, to discover new things. She wasn't the best student, but she made up for it with creativity. She drew very well. For a while, we thought she would pursue an artistic career." "What changed?" It was the question I had asked myself countless times since the betrayal. "I don't know for sure," I admitted. After David died, something changed in her. She became more reserved, more calculating. In her teenage years, she started caring too much about status, about what other people thought. She always wanted the best, the most expensive, the most exclusive. I thought it was just a phase that she would grow out of it. But instead, that trait only intensified over time. Lily nodded thoughtfully. When I met her, even in that brief encounter, I noticed something strange about her. A coldness, a distance, as if she were always calculating something, measuring her words and actions. "Do you think I could have prevented it? That I did something wrong in raising her?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. It was something that haunted me on sleepless nights. Where did I go wrong? Lily placed her hand on mine, her gaze direct and sincere. "As a doctor, I've learned that there are factors beyond our control. Genetic predispositions, brain chemistry, formative experiences that seem insignificant at the time, but that deeply shape a personality. I don't think you could have predicted or prevented the path she chose." She paused as if organizing her thoughts. "Look at me. I have the same genetic material as her, but I was raised by different people in a different environment, and I became a completely different person. That tells me it's not just upbringing, nor just genetics. It's a complex combination of factors, many of which are beyond a parent's control." Her words brought a relief I didn't know I needed. For months, I had carried the weight of guilt, questioning every decision I made as a mother. Hearing Lily, a doctor, a person with scientific training, but also my granddaughter, say that maybe it wasn't my fault was like feeling a knot untie in my chest. "Thank you for that," I whispered. "I'm not just saying what you want to hear," she insisted. "It's what I truly believe." After dinner, I showed Lily the family photo album. Together, we turned the pages that documented the history of the Millers, the wedding with David Sarah's early years, beach vacations, graduations, birthdays. Lily absorbed everything with an insatiable curiosity, asking questions, laughing at the stories that accompanied each picture. For her, these were pieces of the puzzle of her origin connections to a past she never knew. "This is me at your age," I commented, pointing to a photo of me at 27 next to the first hotel we managed. "The resemblance is incredible," she observed. "Same eyes, same face shape, and same determination from what I see in your work." We finally reached the last pages of the album. The most recent photos were from 3 years ago, showing Sarah and Michael at their wedding. "He seems unpleasant," Lily commented, observing Michael's figure. "He was charming when he wanted to be," I explained. "But there was something about him that always made me uncomfortable, a falseness that he couldn't completely hide." "And now they're separated," she murmured. "She's alone in Portugal." I noticed a tone of concern in her voice. "Do you still care about her even after the rejection?" Lily shrugged, a gesture of vulnerability. "It's strange, isn't it? I never really knew her. She's biologically my mother, but she's a complete stranger to me. Still, I can't help but worry. Maybe it's the doctor side of me always wanting to fix broken people." I touched her face gently. "It's your heart, Lily. Big and too generous for your own good." She smiled a little sadly. "Maybe, but that doesn't mean I'm going to try again. She made it clear she doesn't want me in her life. I respect that." That night after Lily left, I sat on the balcony for a long time looking at the stars. I thought about the irony of it all. I had lost a daughter, but gained a granddaughter. Sarah's betrayal, as painful as it was, had indirectly led me to Lily. If it hadn't happened, I might never have known her. Life had a strange sense of humor, sometimes cruel, sometimes surprisingly benevolent. And as I watched the night sky, I felt a strange peace settle over me. It wasn't the end of the pain. That would probably never completely disappear, but it was the beginning of something new, unexpected, and deeply valuable. A year passed since that first meeting with Lily. A year of transformations, of new discoveries, of a different kind of restart that I had never imagined for my life at 66. That sunny Sunday morning, the large hall of the David Miller Children's Home was decorated with colorful balloons and festive ribbons. It was the day of the official inauguration, and children of all ages ran excitedly through the newly built spaces, marveling at their new rooms, the library full of books, the modern playground in the garden. Jessica was by my side, impeccable as always, in a navy blue suit, observing the scene with satisfaction. "It was worth it, wasn't it?" she commented, as we watched a girl of about 7 exploring the bookshelf with reverent admiration, her fingers touching the spines as if they were treasures. "Every penny, every minute," I replied, feeling a wave of gratitude for everything we had managed to accomplish. The home had capacity for 50 children, but we would start with 30 to ensure each one received adequate attention. The team was made up of dedicated professionals, educators, psychologists, social workers, all sharing the vision that this would not be just a shelter, but a real home. "Look who's here." Jessica discreetly pointed towards the entrance. Lily had just entered, accompanied by an older couple. The woman, short and stout, had a warm smile that lit up her time-worn face. The man, tall and thin with graying hair, looked around with evident admiration. "Are those her parents?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Charles and Mary Carter," Jessica confirmed. "I'm finally going to meet them." We walked towards them. Lily saw us and waved her face, breaking into a wide smile. "Grandma Jessica, I want you to meet my parents." The word grandma still gave me a strange feeling, a mixture of surprise and happiness. In the first few months, Lily called me by my name, but gradually as our relationship solidified, she began to use the affectionate term. The first time she did it, we were cooking together, and it was so natural that we almost didn't notice the transition. "A pleasure to meet you." I greeted the couple, extending my hand. "Helen Miller." Mary ignored my outstretched hand and wrapped me in a tight hug. "What a blessing to finally meet you," she said, with such genuine sincerity that I felt tears threatening to form. "Lily talks so much about you." Charles shook my hand firmly. "A pleasure, Mrs. Helen. An impressive place you've built here." After the introductions, I showed them the facilities of the home. Charles, with his knowledge of hospitality, asked insightful questions about organization, logistics, maintenance. Mary delighted in the more personal details: the cozy rooms, the activity rooms, the warm dining hall. "Each child will have their own space," I explained as we toured the bedrooms. "Not large, but comfortable, and most importantly, their own. We wanted to avoid the institutional atmosphere." "You succeeded," Mary affirmed, touching one of the beds, made up with colorful quilts and stuffed animals. "This here doesn't look like an institution. It looks like a real home." Her comment warmed my heart. It was exactly what David and I would have wanted. A place where children without a family could find not only shelter, but affection, security, and opportunities. After the official inauguration, with speeches, a ribbon cutting, and many photographs, we organized a lunch for the special guests in the garden. Under the shade of the old yellow ipe tree, now surrounded by a circular wooden platform, tables were arranged to accommodate about 50 people, including employees, authorities, sponsors, and of course, the children themselves. I sat with Lily and her parents, while Jessica circulated among the guests, always the perfect hostess. "So, Charles," I began, pouring him more lemonade, "Lily told me you managed a hotel for many years." He nodded, his eyes shining with the pleasure of talking about his profession. 35 years at the Grand Sierra Verde Hotel. I started as a receptionist and ended up as general manager. Nothing compared to your chain, of course, but it was a good hotel, respected in the region. "Managing any hotel successfully requires talent," I replied sincerely, "especially for so long." "You must have seen many changes in the industry over the years." "Oh yes, when I started we made reservations in a large ledger. Computers unthinkable." He laughed, shaking his head. "Young people today have no idea what it was like." As we talked about the transformations in the hotel industry, I realized how easy it was to communicate with Charles. We shared similar experiences, common concerns, even though we had operated on very different scales. Mary, on the other hand, was chatting animatedly with Lily about the children in the home. As a former elementary school teacher, she had a natural understanding of children's needs. "You know," she said at one point, turning to me, "when Lily told us about you, I was a little apprehensive. I thought, is this rich, important lady going to find us too simple? Will she want to take our place in Lily's life?" Her frankness took me by surprise. "I would never try to—" I started to protest, but she raised her hand, smiling. "I know that now, but mothers are mothers. No matter the age of the children, one always worries. But seeing this place, what you've built here, showed me who you really are." She gestured broadly, indicating the home around us. "Someone who builds a place like this for children has a huge heart." I was deeply moved by her words. Mary's acceptance meant more than she could ever imagine. "It was Lily who gave me back hope," I confessed, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "After what happened with Sarah, I thought I would never trust anyone again, that I would spend the rest of my life alone, bitter." Mary squeezed my hand, her eyes understanding. "Children have that power, don't they, to heal wounds we thought were incurable." After lunch, while the children played under the supervision of the educators, Lily pulled me to a quieter corner of the garden. "I have some news to tell you," she said, a contained smile playing on her lips. "Our cardiac regeneration project was approved for preliminary clinical trials." "Lily," I exclaimed, "that's wonderful news." "When did you find out?" "Yesterday. I wanted to tell you in person." "The ethics committee approved the protocol, and we already have the first volunteers selected, patients with moderate heart damage who have not responded well to conventional treatments." "When do the trials begin?" "In 3 weeks. If all goes well, we can expand to a larger sample in 6 months." I looked at her with unrestrained pride. In just 1 year, she had transformed a promising but underfunded research into a pioneering project with the potential to save countless lives. "Your grandfather would be so proud," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. So proud." Lily held my hands, her gaze suddenly serious. "I received an email yesterday from Sarah." My heart skipped a beat. In a year, we had had no direct news from her. Only occasional reports from the detective hired by Jessica confirming that she was still in Portugal working at the same hotel, living a seemingly ordinary and lonely life. "What did she want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "She said she found out about my work. Apparently she saw something online about the cardiac research. She said she was proud." Lily seemed confused, as if she didn't know how to feel. "Did you reply?" "Not yet. I don't know if I should." I considered the situation. The part of me that still ached with the betrayal wanted to tell Lily to ignore the email, to protect herself from possible manipulation. But the part that had grown, that had learned from this unexpected journey, knew that the decision was not mine. "What does your heart tell you?" I asked. Lily sighed, looking at the children playing in the distance. A part of me wants to reply to know more about her, maybe even try to build some kind of relationship. Another part remembers how she rejected me the first time, how she treated you, and is afraid. The fear is understandable, but so is the curiosity. "What would you do?" she asked, her eyes seeking guidance in mine. I thought carefully before answering. I think everyone deserves a second chance, not necessarily in your life, but at least to be heard. Maybe you can reply in a limited way, see what she has to say without creating high expectations. Lily nodded slowly. Maybe. I'll think about it. She paused, then asked the question that hung in the air. And you? If she tried to contact you, would you accept? The question floated between us, heavy with possibilities. A year ago, the answer would have been an immediate and definitive no. But now, after everything I had been through, after rediscovering the meaning of family through Lily, her parents, the children in the home, I don't know, I answered honestly. I really don't know. Lily smiled understandingly and linked her arm in mine. We don't have to decide today. We have time. We walked out together into the gentle evening, leaving the David Miller Children's Home behind, but carrying with us the certainty that, regardless of what the future held, reconciliation, forgiveness, new beginnings, or simply the acceptance of things as they were, we had built something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. The poison that Sarah tried to give me had paradoxically transformed into the catalyst for a new life. A life that, despite all its imperfections and pains, was deeply worth living. Now, if you liked this story, click on the next video that is appearing on the screen, because in it there is a story of betrayal and a twist like you've never seen before.